How's it going, everyone? I'm Dylan. This is All You Can Board, and you probably saw that I put out an update on the YouTube community page of our YouTube page, our community tab of our YouTube page, saying that unfortunately I actually came down with COVID. So I'm going through those symptoms right now, but Fantasy Flight Games and their penchant for announcing new heroes at the worst possible time for me announced a new hero today. It's funny because in our Discord I actually joked when I let everyone know that there was going to be a delay in content because I came down with COVID. I put in brackets, watch, I would bet money the Fantasy Flight Games announces a new hero today, and lo and behold, and I just can't let them win. I can't let them do it. So I'm making this video. All I can do is give them my money, but I can't let them win. So I decided I'm going to do this video anyways. This is, kind of a relaxing format anyways to talk about these cards. So if I don't have quite as much spunk as maybe you're, have I ever had spunk? As I normally have, that's why. It's because I'm dealing with some of the sickness right now. But we did get Cyclops announced, which actually does seem like it's going to be a really, really interesting hero. There's some really cool stuff going on in these cards, and they've found yet another way to kind of put a new mechanic into the game attached to a new hero that is not quite a new mechanic so much as it is taking something that's existing and reformatting it, like repurposing it for the mechanics of a new hero. So let's not waste any more time because I don't know how long I'm going to last anyways, and let's jump right into the alter ego, which is Scott Summers. So Scott Summers, the really interesting part here says you may include X-Men allies from any aspect in your deck. This is I guess the first time in a little while now that we've gotten a deck building ability on a new hero, which I'm always a huge fan of. I like when we have different ways we can craft our decks. This one is specifically tied to X-Men allies, and we're obviously going to get a whole bunch of X-Men allies over the course of this X-Men cycle. We're getting some in this pack as well, so you're going to have tons to choose from, and the fact that you're going to be able to deck build specifically for leadership or protection, whatever it is you want to go with, but then also be able to just kind of go across all the X-Men allies we have released and say what works in this deck is going to open up some really good deck building possibilities. So that's super cool. On top of that, we have Constant Training, which is an action. Search your deck for a tactic upgrade and add it to your hand, limit once per round. Now, if you're wondering what a tactic upgrade is, don't fret because we're going to jump into that right away, and we're going to talk about tactic upgrades. That is one of the big new additions coming to Cyclops specifically, and works with his mechanics and everything. So recovery 3, hit points of 10, hand size of 6, and let's jump into the hero form. So the hero form is, of course, Cyclops. Decent stat line, a pretty good stat line with 2 thwart, 1 attack, 2 defense. The ability here is Optic Blast. Now, Optic Blast says, action attack, spend 1 resource of any type to deal 3 damage to an enemy with an upgrade attached, limit once per round. Now, you're probably thinking at first, that is very situational. There has to be an upgrade attached to an enemy, and we only get to do it once per round. This is a really crappy hero ability, potentially. Well, this is not just, the enemy upgrade in itself and adding upgrades on, because the entire thing to do with Cyclops and his pack is that you are going to have tactical upgrades that you can attach to the enemy, to the villain, to minions that are basically beneficial to you to have them upgraded. So you're going to be wanting to attach your upgrades to enemies, and that's going to allow you to be able to do Optic Blast, which is going to hit for 3 base, but there's other ways that you can increase that damage and do other things with the damage. So it's not going to be very hard to have upgrades attached to enemies, which is a really good thing for this ability and a really cool thing for the hero in general. So that being said, let's jump into some of the Cyclops cards. You can start to get a feel of how Cyclops is going to play. So the first one we're going to look at is Exploit Weakness. This is a tactical upgrade. It costs 1, and it says attach to an enemy, max 1 per enemy. Temporary, which we'll talk about in a second. Increase the amount of damage attached enemy takes from each attack by 1. Now, obviously, this is a very good card, a very good upgrade that you want to be attaching, and it's very cheap. Temporary is an important keyword to note here because temporary means that it only lasts until the end of the round, which means at the end of the round, this is going to get discarded off the enemy. If they didn't have that, just upgrading an upgrade for 1 that basically increases every damage you do by 1 is really, really good. That would have to be more expensive if it was permanent. So temporary is basically the opposite of permanent. It's almost like the Nick Fury effect kind of thing, except it's at the end of the round, or I guess Nick Fury is at the end of the round as well. Sometimes I get mixed up between phase and round, but regardless, this is a really, really good card. If you're able to get this out, especially in a multiplayer game, before, like say you've gone first and you've attached this, and everyone's going to be able to increase all their damage by 1, you could have this huge influx of damage, especially if everyone had cards in their hand that are able to do a lot of damage as is from multiple sources. Suddenly you're going to increase all those sources by 1. That can add up across the entire round. So really good card that's going to shine extra, brightly in multiplayer, but obviously can still be good in single player. It's just, you're going to have to be hitting, from multiple different places on your turn to really bring out the maximum value of this card. Next up, we've got Practice Defense. This is a 0 cost upgrade. It's also a tactic, and it says attached to enemy, max 1 per enemy. Temporary, again, attached enemy gets a -1 attack. So this is a way for you to reduce some of the incoming damage, potentially if they only have 1 attack, reducing it to 0, so you're just relying on whatever the boost is, or just negating some of that effect coming in, and it costs nothing. You just are able to attach it for free to whatever enemy you want. It could be the villain, could be a minion, and that's going to power up your optical blasts or optic blast. So, even if you're thinking, oh, -1 attack on the enemy, is this something that long term is going to, help me? Can I use this as a resource instead? The fact that you're basically getting a free card to just have your optic blast be able to be triggered is really important. And that's why I said earlier that it's going to be pretty easy to trigger that, because the fact that we have free cards that can be attached that allow it to basically take effect is going to make it really, really simple to do. So even with the ability already being good, the fact that it's a free tactical upgrade is sort of the cherry on top here. Then we've got another 0 cost tactical upgrade. This is Priority Target, attached to enemy with max 1 per round, temporary. Interrupt, when attached enemy is defeated, the player who defeated it draws 2 cards. This is a potentially really powerful card. Now, you would rarely attach this to the villain unless you were, say, on its first stage and it was winding down, or you just really needed to, this round trigger Optic Blast. So you decided, hey, I'm just willing to attach this and basically have it do nothing except trigger my Optic Blast. Generally, what you'd want to do is attach this to a minion that you're going to be taking out this round, and then whoever it is that defeats it, whether it's you, whether it's one of your teammates, you're going to draw 2 cards, and you didn't pay anything for this card. So even if it's yourself, you've drawn 2 cards for something you were going to do anyways. You've activated your Optic Blast. I mean, this is only beneficial things. The only thing you have to overcome is that it's temporary. You just have to make sure you can trigger it before the end of the round. But to me, this is a really, really powerful card, and one that's going to facilitate so much stuff on your turn by giving you extra cards in your hand for doing stuff, like I said, you would have been doing anyways if you're likely attaching this that turn. So really good card. Then we've got Field Commander. So this is a really interesting one because of some of the card text here. It's a 1 cost upgrade. It is a title upgrade, not a tactic. And it says Field Commander is the name, and it says you take the first turn during the player phase, and in brackets it clarifies when your turn is done, play proceeds in player order, starting with the first player, you do not take another turn. So basically all that's happening here is, if say you're playing with 4 players in the max, whatever the turn order would be, this is ignoring turn order and saying you go first, then it goes back to whatever the turnover order is. The reason that's so good in Cyclops is because his tactical upgrades only last for that round, so you want to go first as often as you possibly can to have as many players benefit from your tactical upgrades. Cyclops is often likely going to be going first. The fact that it says you take the first turn, you probably already would be vying to take the first turn whenever possible. This is just solidifying that you will. The other ability here says each Cyclops upgrade attached to a minion loses the temporary keyword, which means that if you've attached any of your upgrades to minions, they stay permanently until you defeat that minion, which is a huge boon. That is, some of these upgrades are really, really powerful. The fact that they're now out there permanent, I said earlier, that would have been a broken mechanic at that resource cost for some of those. This is basically giving you that, broken feeling by making them permanent, but only on minions and not on the villain, which is, makes sense, because otherwise it could really get broken. Regardless, I think this is going to be an important card to sort of, facilitate what you're doing already, but also be able to say, hey, we don't have to defeat these minions this turn. If you defeat it next turn, you're going to be able to draw your 2 cards then. We don't have to rush. I'm going to get this out. We're going to get some of these attached. We're going to negate a bunch of the stuff these minions are doing, and we'll take care of them when we can. We don't have to feel the pressure to do it now. Interesting card for sure. Next up, we've got Ruby Quartz Visor. This is a 2 cost upgrade, hero resource. Exhaust this card to generate a energy resource for your Optic Blast ability specifically. That's all you can use it for, and that attack gains piercing or range. Now, obviously having this card in play that will permanently activate your Optic Blast is really good. You don't have to worry about cashing other resources. You don't have to worry about am I going to be able to afford to do Optic Blast this turn? You have this card where that's all it can be used for. It is going to just trigger your Optic Blast every single turn by having this Visor in play. That's really good in and of itself. Sort of the added benefit here is that you gain piercing and ranged on that attack. You may not need them, but hey, you're still going to get this permanent resource to be able to activate Optic Blast whenever you want. If you happen to also need piercing or ranged, you have it as well. So I think this is a really good card. It's not overly cheap at 2. You're going to spend 3 cards total to get it out, but you're getting a permanent way to trigger Optic Blast. So as long as you're in a situation where you're hitting Optic Blast every single turn, which is something you're going to be obviously wanting to try to do, then this card is going to get so much mileage and have so much value. Next up, we've got Full Blast. This is a 1-cost event. It's a superpower, a hero interrupt. When you use your Optic Blast ability, exhaust Cyclops, this attack deals 8 additional damage and gains overkill. This is a super powerful attack. We often see these huge attack cards on heroes in their signature cards, and I love them every time we get them. This is an interesting one because it's taking Optic Blast, which already does 3 damage, and it's turning it into an 11 damage hit. This is not, it does 8 damage. This deals 8 additional damage. So you're still doing the original 3, and it has overkill, which means you're doing 11 damage that if you hit a minion will spill over to the villain as well. Super powerful card. The fact that you have to exhaust Cyclops is a small price to pay. He only has 1 attack to begin with. Yes, you may have powered him up, but who's going to say no to 11 damage with overkill, potentially with piercing and ranged as well if you have the Visor out. This is just an unbelievable card. I don't know, I haven't looked at the numbers to see if we're getting multiple copies of it, if it's just a 1 copy, but regardless, Full Blast is one of those cards that every time you use it, it's just going to feel so satisfying and is likely going to lead to these huge turns that always feel great in Marvel Champions when you pull them off. Then we've got Tactical Brilliance. So this is a 2-cost event, hero action thwart, remove 3 threat from a scheme, choose a tactic card in your discard pile and add it to your hand. Awesome card. The fact that you're removing 3 threat for 2 on a scheme and getting an additional benefit on top of that is really good, and the benefit is so crucial to everything you're doing with Cyclops. Having a round or a turn go by where you don't have a tactical upgrade to attach is a huge detriment to everything you're trying to do, because you can't use Optic Blast. It's going to make for much slower turns than you normally would have. The fact that this is going to guarantee, hey, you can grab a tactic from your discard pile and add it to your hand to be able to play this turn or to have for next turn, whatever the case, however you want to use it, is just a huge benefit. It's going to make it so that you can have tactics cards in your hand more often, which of course facilitates so much. So really important card that I think you'll obviously be using a lot when situations call for it, especially even if you just need to remove threat from a scheme. All right, getting into some of the allies, we do have some different aspect allies that are coming into this pack. It's not just leadership because of Cyclops' ability. First one is Beast. So Beast is a 4-cost ally with 3 health, 2 thwart, 2 attack, 1 consequential damage on each of those. Response after Beast enters play, search your deck and discard pile for a resource card and add it to your hand, then shuffle your deck. Really interesting card. Now, we will get to a new resource card that we're getting here in this pack, so there will be a new target you can hit with this. Obviously, all your other resource cards can still be hit as well. Every deck has some kind of, well, I shouldn't say every deck, but most decks have, whether it's energy or strength or some of the, more stylized resource cards. There are going to be multiple targets to hit. The fact that you're going to be able to grab one with this is really good, and it's interesting because usually the thing that slows down or works against higher cost allies like this is they're just really expensive. So to play a 4-cost ally, it's this card and 4 other cards potentially if you don't have any resource cards, that that's 5 cards out of your hand. That could be your entire hand to play a card like this, or leaving you with 1 card that you can't do anything with. The fact that you can go and grab a resource card that might be generating you 2 or 3 resources, whatever, is going to be so great, because now it's going to allow you to sort of extend your turn. Yes, I played Beast, but I got this resource card, and now I can do more in my turn than I normally would have been able to. So it kind of makes up for the fact that it's an expensive ally, and I like that, because it's one of the things that will, hopefully work in favor of expensive allies like this when they have things like this attached to it. So Beast seems really good. His stat line's decent as well. It'll be interesting to see how he works with the whole deck. Next, we have a Aggression X-Men ally. This is Dust, 3 cost, 3 health, 1 thwart, 1 attack, consequential damage on each. The interrupt here, when Dust attacks a minion, she attacks each minion in play, not just that you're engaged with. Dust takes +1 consequential damage for this attack. So obviously that ability is super, super powerful. I mean, I don't have to tell you that if you're facing Ultron, using this kills potentially every single Ultron bot in play just by swinging, just by attacking, which is obviously ridiculously good. Not every situation are all the minions going to have 1 health. So just doing 1 damage to every minion, still really good, but where this card is really going to shine is if you're using it in a leadership deck, for instance, like Cyclops' work, because normally maybe you wouldn't be able to pair it with some of these leadership cards because of the restrictions of aggression. Now you can pair it with them in Cyclops' deck and boost this ally's attack, its health, to be able to take more hits, whatever the case may be, and suddenly Dust is going to be able to do 2 damage to everything or 3 damage to everything. That gets ridiculously out of hand. You basically have this, multi-use board wipe in ally form that can also take a hit for you. So Dust seems like it could be really, really powerful, specifically so in Cyclops, but I'm sure there'll be uses for it as well in Aggression specifically as well. All right, next we have another leadership card. This is Danger Room Training, a 1-cost upgrade. We see a lot of these training cards. This is another one. Attached to an X-Men ally, max 1 training upgrade per ally. Attached ally gets +1 thwart, +1 attack, and +1 hit point. So obviously with Dust that we just saw, amazing card to include there. But obviously just in general, for one, to be able to have a boost to thwart, a boost to attack, and to hit points, for some allies in the game, that could be a huge, huge benefit. And just the longevity of the hit points is obviously really good, let alone the longevity of the hit points and doing more damage for the longer period that ally is in play. Really good card, doesn't cost a lot. I think we'll see a lot of this card. Then we have Coordinated Attack. This is a 0-cost upgrade attached to a minion, max 1 per minion. Each ally takes -1 consequential damage when attacking attached minion. Interesting card with the potential to be super powerful. I mean, if you are targeting a specific minion in play that is powerful and was going to take you a long time to defeat, or it wasn't, but it was going to have to be, you'd have to spend all your allies to do so and potentially kill them off, whatever the case may be. A lot of minions only have 1 consequential damage, allies only have 1 consequential damage. So suddenly putting this into play, you could be attacking a minion for free with your entire board until that minion's done, and not have lost any of the longevity of any of your allies, not set yourself back in any way, and that you can kind of carry on with your strategy and with the game itself. So for a 0-cost upgrade, really, really good. It is a bit situational. I mean, the fact that it's only being attached to a minion, and the fact that you have to have enough allies in play, or enough usage to be able to, I don't want to say justify because it's free, but to really get the mileage out of it, means it's not always going to be, useful. But when it is, I think it's just going to be a super great card. Then we've got Effective Leadership. This is the new resource card I talked about. It generates a wild resource. It has max 2 per deck, but it also says interrupt. When you spend this card to play an ally specifically, that ally gets +1 thwart and +1 attack till the end of the phase. Super good card here because leadership is playing allies constantly. So using your resource cards on allies is something you're likely going to be doing fairly often. The fact that you're now just going to get this added benefit of, hey, not only am I generating a wild resource that might come in handy for other things, but also when I'm playing this ally, I'm going to boost their stats for this turn that I play them. You're going to have more incentive to play that ally and swing for a thwart, swing for an attack, do some damage with it. If you have ways to untap allies, suddenly you might be able to get multiple uses out of these boosts of attack. But regardless, I mean, the fact that it generates a wild resource in and of itself means that you can use it for stuff beyond allies, and even if you don't get that benefit, you're not feeling too bad about that either. It's still generating your resource that is customizable as you see fit. So interesting, a resource card, and especially with if you want to grab this with Beast specifically. I don't know whether that would necessarily be the best card to grab with Beast, because obviously if you've used most of your hand with Beast, you might be wanting to grab a resource card that generates 2 resources. But there can be multiple situations. You could have used a strength and an energy to play Beast, and getting this to play another ally is exactly what you're looking for. So regardless, a very interesting card that I think will be pretty good too. Then we've got Teamwork, a lot of 0-cost cards in this deck. A 0-cost event, Hero Interrupt. When you use your basic thwart or basic attack power, exhaust an ally that you control and add that ally's matching power to your hero power for this use. So this is a way to essentially get a use out of one of your allies without taking the consequential damage. Normally, let's say you had an ally with 2 attack and you have your main hero with 2 attack. Normally you'd have to attack with both of them, you'd do 4, and your ally would take consequential damage. Now with this card, you're using the 2 damage on your hero, you're playing Teamwork, and you're exhausting an ally without taking the consequential damage to basically add that attack to your attack. So you're in the same situation, you're getting the same use out of everything, but you're not taking the consequential damage. And honestly, I don't want to understate that and make it seem like that's not good. That is really good. There's a lot of allies that you would love to be able to extend the longevity of them. So I just think that Teamwork's not necessarily going to fit into every single leadership deck archetype, but in ones where it's all about extending the lifespan of your allies and not taking consequential damage, I think that obviously Teamwork is going to be an essential card, and one that you're going to want to use a lot. So, and we're getting a lot of new allies obviously within this deck and just going forward with X-Men, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great targets for this. Then we've got Danger Room. This is a 2-cost basic support, alter ego response. After an X-Men ally enters play, exhaust Danger Room. Search your deck and discard pile for a training upgrade and attach it to that ally. Any player whose alter ego has the mutant trait may trigger this ability. Awesome card. I think this is a fantastic card. I mean, it's maybe not as flashy as some of the other cards we see out there, but the fact, and I mean, the one restriction is obviously you have to be in alter ego form, which, you know, is a restriction. Not that you won't be spending time in alter ego form, but it is something that's not always going to be able to come into play the way you want. But the fact that we have all these training cards that we've been getting, and they are really good for the most part, the fact that now as soon as you play an ally, you can just exhaust this to go grab that training card, put it onto the ally immediately, and have boosted a bunch of their stats. I mean, for some of the allies we're looking at, like Dust, having those training cards, having those upgrades is so beneficial. To have this guaranteed way to add a training card onto Dust, it is phenomenal. So I think this is a really good card, and the added benefit is any player's alter ego has the mutant trait may trigger this ability. So if you're playing multiplayer and your teammates are an alter ego and they are also playing mutants, and that's how you've kind of, you know, built your decks around cards like this, they can trigger this ability as well. So anyone can choose to use this. I mean, that is just an extra benefit for multiplayer with a card that's already really good. I love it. I can't wait to try it out myself. And the last card we're going to look at is Utopia. This is a 2-cost basic support that says if each of your allies has the X-Men trait, increase your ally limit by 1, and the response after an X-Men ally enters play, exhaust Utopia to ready an X-Men character. A really good card as well. You're obviously only going to play this card if you're playing it in a deck with all X-Men allies or like 90% X-Men allies, so you're likely always going to hit that requirement and have your ally limit increase. And the fact that every time you now play an X-Men ally, you're going to get to ready another X-Men character is going to facilitate and allow for so much extra stuff. We're getting all these great tools for X-Men characters, and it's going to be so much fun to deck build for them and see what kind of decks we can come up with. So really, really good card that I think kind of rounds out everything we've looked at. And that's it. That is Cyclops. We made it. I've made it. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of Cyclops. I honestly think this is a really solid hero. I love what they've done with these upgrades that we attach to the enemy and focusing it on that. And he seems super powerful, being able to do like 11 damage and put these tactical upgrades in play. I think he, for himself and also for all the other players, I think this is going to be a great a multiplayer hero, big time in terms of, you know, leading the pack, in terms of like Cyclops takes the first turn, does all this stuff that facilitates everyone else having all these benefits and boosted damage, all that kind of stuff. Can't wait to try it out for myself. Let me know what you think in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.